Yeah, it's late. I'm about to crash, but I wanted to holler at y'all for a minute. This is His Lordship in the building. It's a full moon, y'all. Let's talk about it. Sage Wizzle in the building. You know what I'm saying? Everybody should be asleep about right now. Hopefully people will catch the playback. Olivia Hicks in the building. I just want to talk about the moon for a minute. You know what I'm saying? Since we have a full moon. Good morning, good night. It's good night for me. I gotta hit the sack soon, but I just wanted to talk about something intellectual for a change. You know what I'm saying? You know, push the drama to the left and let's just talk about something intellectual. What's up, y'all? If it's just us in the building, it's just us in the building. It's all good. I'm sure people will, check it out later when they wake up. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if y'all can see the moon where you at. It was raining over here, but before it started raining, the moon was huge. It was huge. What's up, Key Dad, man? You know, I feel like playing everybody intro. Like Key Dad, man, got a dope intro. ZX got a dope intro. Diva got a dope intro. Madiva got a dope intro. There's a lot of dope intros, but this ain't the intro show. But the next show, it's going to be like, I'm just going to be playing a bunch of intros on the next show. Well, you know what? I like Key Deadman's intro so much. And a lot of people don't even know because other people have posted theirs and theirs are great. But Key Deadman's intro is the best kept secret. So let me look for it. We're going to pause the whole show for Key Deadman. Let's see here. Astronaut. Okay, chat room. All right, now we have a completely. Come on, man. It just triggered. Let me make sure it's in the middle of the screen. Okay, let me make some adjustments there. volume down a little bit. Turn the volume down a little bit. That was straight fire. And that was Tupac's voice. So Tupac collaborated on this track. He sent me his vocals from Cuba. But yeah, man, I had to take a sidebar. Now I got to get back to the main subject. The whole reason I went live tonight. On a serious note, let's see here. Well, you can use it in Live Air Solo or OBS Studio. So you're gonna have to take that OBS Studio course so you can use it. You know what I'm saying? But it's all good. That's straight fire. Wait till they see the playback on that. That's gonna be the talk. Yeah. I actually got to go to bed because in the morning I got to do an interview with Diva. I don't know if you guys know. I think before I go to work, I got to do an interview with Diva. So I need to get to the punchline real quick. It's a full moon. Yeah, it's all good. I'm ready. I want to do some classes this Sunday before I go to the museum. So maybe Sunday morning, people can get in touch with me, Key Dad Man, and a few other people. I don't know if they want their business on the street, but a couple other people want to get with me on that also. And I appreciate it. But quickly, I wanted to discuss the moon, and I wanted to discuss man's first trip to the moon, and I wanted to discuss NASA really quick. And I appreciate you signing up for the class, Key. And encourage others, because I want to see some decorum in this black sector. I want to see this black sector to be more professional and more open to a international audience, and and I want us to grow as a sector. You know what I'm saying? So, and I'm growing too. I'm learning too. I'm not. There's always going to be somebody who knows somebody who doing it, who know how to do it better than you, or use the software better than you, or whatever. But even though I have a long experience with this stuff, I was still intimidated by OBS Studio myself. And once I dove into it, it was like, oh, this reminds me of Flash, Macromedia. This is not that bad. You know. Okay, Key. I think I want to do something Sunday before I go to the museum to see this exhibit, and I'm gonna do a story about the exhibit too. So I'm gonna be filming and taking pictures. Um, so I'll give you a final confirmation tomorrow night, which would be your day or your morning. So, I'm still juggling with the fact that I'm not sure that we went to the moon. I really don't. I can't believe 100% that we went to the moon. I know that there's all kinds of conspiracies out there, and you got the flat Earth conspiracy, you got the satellite conspiracy. There's no satellites. There's only buildings with satellite with antennas on it, but we really don't have satellites. And I do believe that those topics and subjects are conspiracies, but when it comes to going to the moon, I'm leaning towards that we really didn't go. I believe that we've never been out of lower space orbit. We've only been 200 and something miles in space, and no higher than that. And that's as high as we can go safely. And there's no way that somebody can travel more than 200 and something miles in the air and live to be 85 or 90 years old. We have international pilots who fly international commercial flights that get brain cancer left and right because they fly a little higher than domestic flights. And you mean to tell me that Buzz Aldrin and all these guys went to the moon and came back and they lived to be old men in their 80s? I don't think so. And tonight, quickly and swiftly, I'm going to try to prove my point, but this is a very this ain't going to be a PowerPoint, and this is going to be a very stripped down, my opinion. It's going to be my opinion, my theory, stripped down. And I did listen to other people's opinions and theories, and base my opinion is based on other people's theories and opinions. So I didn't come up with this on my own, but I listened to a lot of theories and opinions. And if you have Netflix, there is a movie called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. And that movie is very convincing about the Apollo space program. A matter of fact, I'm so confident that what I'm going to say is going to be so controversy that this show probably will get flagged because I'm using a lot of copyrighted imagery and stuff like that. So we'll see, you know what I'm saying? So I thought I would play one of my futuristic tracks in the background also, just to give it that futuristic vibe, you know what I'm saying? So they started programming us to believe that we can make it to the moon early in our childhood. When they came out with Star Trek, that was the beginning of the whole hustle. When they came out with Star Trek, that was the beginning of the conditioning. And would you believe that almost the same logo for Star Trek is practically the same logo for NASA? And we forget that NASA is a government agency. It's not it's not a public company. It's a government funded. As a matter of fact, 8% of the budget goes to NASA from the government, but our government spends probably 680 billion on everything else, but only 8% of that goes to NASA, and now it's being reduced down to 1% and less than 1%. Yet they want to go back to the moon, which they haven't did in over 40 something years, and it's going to take at least 23 billion. Trump is trying to get 23 billion to go back to the moon by 2025. Now, like I said, when our space station is in lower space orbit, when the shuttle goes up in the air, it goes no higher than lower space orbit. It's just a commercial flight, a cargo. The space shuttle ain't nothing but FedEx and UPS in the air. It doesn't go into outer space. It goes into lower space orbit. It's delivering packages. They make this stuff seem larger than life and all hocus pocus and stuff, but it's really it's just the industry. Now, when the space when they decided to go to the moon in 1969, we had just finished having a brutal battle over in Vietnam. Now, everything that I'm saying could be debated. I could stand to be corrected. I am not a expert. I am not someone who claims to be a know-all, see-all. This is just my opinion and theory, and I could go off on a diatribe based on a false idea. So you're gonna have to bear with me. I'm just saying that this is my opinion and my theory. But they started conditioning us to believe in a space program, starting with the propaganda series called Star Trek. And like I said, the logo that Star Trek used is the same logo similar logo that we use for NASA today. Even the acronym NASA in another language, if you use the word NASA, it means to deceive. It's like basically to create magic or deceive. You see what I'm saying? Just like we couldn't sell our cars when we came out with the Chevy Nova. We could not sell Novas in Brazil because in South America or Brazil, the word Nova means boulder or rock. So who would want to drive a rock, a large rock? You know, so everything about Star Trek, but this ain't about Star Trek, but you know, it would start out space, the final frontier. But now we have the Mandela effect, and people can't remember if it says the final frontier, or did he say space? I don't even know the other one. I think for me, I remember space, the final frontier. So these are some slides and pictures from the mission, and they're supposed to be on the moon. Now, Stanley Kubrick made a movie called Space Odyssey 2001. I watch it all the time. It's a very significant movie. I find the movie incredible. I actually tried to copy Stanley Kubrick's style of cinematography, but as an African American, I do find the movie somewhat racist, and but it's still a beautiful film. They had an IBM tablet in that film. They had their own artificial intelligence computer controlling the ship. And, you know, today we have the Apple tablet. And today we have Siri and Cortana and Alexa. Well, in 1968, they already had that concept. They were reading the paper in the movie. They were reading the paper on tablets. Yeah, see, they call it the Mandela effect. No one can remember if it says space, the final frontier, or space. Yeah, it's either the or a final frontier or the final frontier or something like that. But you know, Sugar Smacks changed their name to Honey Smacks. I don't remember what year they did it, but they call that the Mandela effect. But I'm trying to go through this quickly, and this is a rush job, but I hope you find it informative, or hopefully it will give you, make you think twice about this, because we don't think about these things anymore. But we have to look at the times. In 1968, Stanley Kubrick made 2001: Space Odyssey, and it made you think that, by 2001 we would have a commercial space industry where you could go to the space station to visit, stay overnight, stay a few nights, and then if you needed to go to the moon, you could go from the space station to the moon. And there were luxury hotels on the space station, and you could exercise while you're on the space station. And they had commercial flights to the space station. It was a beautiful thing, because the commercial flight to the space station had video screens in the headrest, and we only have that recently on commercial airlines now. But back in 1968, they were already familiar with that concept and saw that as a futuristic design. So we did get the screens in the back of the seat, but what we didn't do is reach the level of Space Odyssey 2001. Even right now in 2020, we have the movie Space Odyssey 2001 still looks futuristic. It's still a viable sci-fi movie that could be real release and still look like a futuristic film, and that's a shame. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, it may have been changed. We're not sure as far as the intro for Star Trek. They might have modified it, but the whole concept for Cortana, Alexa, and Siri started. That was the first seeing it in television, and but yeah, so there is some red flags and some things that make this very suspicious as far as the space program. First of all, there were many stones that need to be overturned. First of all, we had just killed 3 million people in Vietnam, and Nixon was about to be impeached, and he did get impeached, and then we killed 3 million people in Vietnam. Now, I could stand to be corrected, but for the sake of argument, our points are being made about the space program, not about history. But we needed a distraction, and man's first trip to the moon was an excellent distraction to get people to forget about what happened in the war. You see what I'm saying? Also, since we are a commercial, since we, you know what I'm trying to say. We are a republic, even though some people try to say we're a democratic society, but America is a republic. We use democracy for our political system, but we are a republic. But we do believe in commerce and that other word I'm looking for. So yeah, does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? Well, now I think art controls life. Art influences life, I think, ever since God knows when, but especially since the 70s. You know what I'm saying? But they wanted us to put us in the mind frame that we could do it, that we could make it. So Stanley Kubrick had came out with this new technology where you can make the landscape look larger than life. You could be in the building, you can have a backdrop, and look like you're out in a big old desert or a big wasp of land. And Stanley Kubrick was the only one who had that technology developed. So when he made Space Odyssey 2001, it looked very scenic. And he wasn't using a lens for that, an anamorphic lens, because back then anamorphic lenses were popular. He actually had built a soundstage that gave the illusion. See what I'm saying? And that was perfect timing. So if you was going to pretend like you was on the moon, now we have the technology, and nobody has seen it except in Stanley Kubrick's film. We have the technology to give the illusion that we're on a big wasp or a big landscape. You see what I'm saying? But if you look at the picture where you can see this ship and you can see the mountains in the background, the texture of the dirt and the texture of the hill is different. You see what I'm saying? And also, so there's like a line there. There's a line there. The land, the texture of the land looks different than the texture of the hillside. Also, if you speed up the film of the astronauts walking around and hopping around, they look like they're moving at normal speed, because they look like they're moving in slow motion on the regular film. But when you speed it up, then everything looks normal. When they're hitting a golf ball, when they're jumping up and down, when they're driving the little vehicle, everything looks normal. Matter of fact, with the little electric car that cost $60 million, the arch of the dust coming from behind the vehicle would have been much higher, and it would have stayed in the air much longer. Plus, those vehicles had rubber tires. They were supposed to have metal mesh tires, but you can see that the tires are rubber, and with the temperature on the moon, no rubber tires would survive on the moon. Also, the astronaut suit, from the air pack to the chest, they have a Hasselblad camera on the chest. From the camera to the life support backpack, that's 3 feet of space. The hatch to the door of the spaceship is only 2 feet of space. You see what I'm saying? And also, there were only about 5 pictures released from the space program that they circulated around the world. Everybody around the world took the time to watch this launch. The whole world was looking. The whole world paused. I believe that Russia knew that it was all BS, but Russia didn't say anything because Russia was going through its own drama at the time. Russia was going through a drought, and they were practically experiencing starvation. And at the same time, America had an overabundance of grain. And for some reason, as rumor has it, America charged Americans more for grain at that time and gave the Russians a super deal on grain, so they would be able to ride the storm of the drought. And as thanks for that, Russia didn't snitch on America and didn't let the world know that America's space program was BS. You see what I'm saying? Now, Russia, when Hitler was defeated and the scientists wanted to defect, I guess, we drew straws or whatever between 2 scientists to see who was going to get what scientist. Well, we lost that roll of the dice. We had got the weaker scientists, because during Hitler's reign, Hitler invented the jet plane. Let me take this sidebar. Hitler invented he invented the freeway and all that stuff. All that stuff came from Germany. The first car, gasoline, rocket fuel, the jet plane. luckily he couldn't perfect the jet plane, or we would have lost the war. He was developing the jet plane during the war, but he didn't finish it. So when we split the scientists between our two countries, Russia ended up with the better scientists, which made Russia 20 years ahead of America in the space program. We was losing the space program, and we did not want to risk looking like complete idiots. We didn't want our kids to have low self-esteem. We didn't want our country to have low self-esteem. So I'm not mad at America. If it's proven that we did fake the space program, I'm not upset, because the benefits from that was to build hope in our people, and the youth, the little boys and girls, and make us feel better about ourselves, because we did have a terrible war against Vietnam at the time. Russia was the first to put a man in space around the Earth, the first to put up a satellite, the first to do a spacewalk, the first to put a female, the first to put more than one astronaut into space, first to put an animal up in space. I could just go on and on and on about what Russia did first in the space program. And if Russia didn't go to the moon before us, that meant they didn't go because it wasn't possible. You couldn't pay a Russian. You couldn't threaten a Russian astronaut to go. I'm not sure about the Cold War, because we had just finished a war in the Asian countries. We had just when we finished dealing with Hitler, we was so satisfied with the technology we were getting from the war. See, Hitler did all the tragic things, and he got blamed for those tragic, terrible things that he did. Countries like us stepped in and reaped the benefits of his research, or his scientist research, and the benefits of all the terrible things he did, and we don't get blamed for that because he is the poster boy for those terrible things. All those experiments on human beings, all those experiments on technology and stuff like that, because we helped overthrow him, we reap the benefits of that. So when we got the scientists, we had to use media and propaganda to change their image around and make them look like heroes. And then we tried to use their mind to develop our rocket program and our rocket program. Basically, rockets can be used for missiles, space travel, commercial airlines, and all of that stuff like that. You see what I'm saying? So Russia ended up with the better scientists, and I'm saying that based on their space program was moving quite more efficient than ours. Matter of fact, the oxygen that they used on their ship was equivalent to the oxygen that they used on the submarine, and the metal on their spaceships was thicker than ours. We was using a 50-50 formula for our oxygen, which made our oxygen very volatile and dangerous. Our switches inside the ship had spark shields on it, and even with those spark shields, didn't guarantee 100% safety. And we did have a accident during a test launch, but some of us feel that was a murder, because one of the persons that died during the test launch was a whistleblower, and so his death was convenient. And sadly, they took a couple of other people with him, so it wouldn't look like a murder. But after they tested the people and their death, they realized that the people had died before the rocket blew up, and they were killed with some kind of gas, or some kind of substance inside, and then the door only opened inward, so it was hard to save them. Yeah. So, like I said, you know, Russia was so far ahead of us in the space program. Why didn't they go to the moon first? You see what I'm saying? Because you can't go, and I'm gonna show you why we can't go. But it's just a theory, and I have two theories. Like, I'm not married to the idea of my theory. I have a double theory. If I'm proven wrong that we did go, then I believe that there were 3 space programs. There was the one that you see publicly, that Stanley Kubrick doctored up to make it look very nice and pretty. And then there was the astronauts that actually went, but we never got to see what they looked like because they didn't live long. After they came back to Earth, they only lived less than 10 years, maybe 5 to 10 years. And they're buried in some secret burial, and they're considered heroes. And then you had the people that were inside the suits that you saw for the photographs and stuff like that. So you had the dudes that were around for the interviews. Those were the poster boys, the pretty boys. They did all the interviews and the talking and stuff like that. Then you had the people who was on the film set that wore the suits because you couldn't see their face, and they just did all the film work, right? They was the extras, I guess. And then you had the astronauts that physically went, but went through a terrible ordeal, and when they came back, they had nothing but health problems, and they didn't live but maybe 5 to 10 years. I would say they probably didn't live no more than 5 years when they came back. That's my secondary theory. So if the Hasselblad camera on their chest that they didn't see when they took pictures, they couldn't put the camera up to their visor. The camera was mounted on their chest. Their fingers had thimbles for fingertips on their spacesuit, and their spacesuit was air pressured. Just imagine walking around in a pressurized suit, just like those divers that go deep sea diving and they have those pressurized suits. These guys were better photographers than astronauts. We only had about 5 publicity pictures from the space program. They didn't release 3,000 of the pictures until the invention of Photoshop. So that's kind of peculiar also. They didn't release those other pictures until the invention of Photoshop. And you mean to tell me that you got at least 3,000 pictures and each picture was perfect? But to me, that's further proof that we didn't go, because these pictures were flawless. And there's a radiation belt out there called the Van Allen radiation belt. And that should have ruined the film on the way back to Earth. The film should have been blurry and fuzzy because of that. The capsule, there's only a 2 feet circumference to the capsule door. Now this might be from Apollo 11. Now different ships had different dynamics, but we know one thing for sure: between the backpack and the camera on the astronaut spacesuit, that's 3 feet. This doorway is only 2 feet. Okay. And the reason why I'm starting late, because it took a long time to prepare for this show. Let me see if I can zoom in on some of this here. Let's look a little closer into this. And I hope people catch the playback. Now check this out. Check this out. I want y'all to be able to read this, so I'm I'm zooming in for y'all. Let me find another one of my futuristic tracks to keep the vibe going. Let's see here. Now, look what all the stuff this astronaut's supposed to have. The cooling system, the oxygen cylinder, the pump circulator, cooling the water. Look at all the layers this dude got. It's like 6 layers. All right. That little thing on his right knee is where they release the piss. That's the piss drainage right there. I mean, how heavy is this backpack? And you know what? They left out a couple of things. On the backpack, right where it says backpack, there are hooks on each side of the backpack. There are hooks where wires can be connected to the backpack to lift a person up. There are hooks there, just like somebody's being controlled by wires to make them, like there's a spring action. There's like a marionette, but in this drawing, they conveniently left out the 2 hooks that's on the left and the right side of this backpack. Also, what's missing is on the chest, there is no attachment for the camera, but on the chest, now, one astronaut was still on the ship circling the moon, but the 2 astronauts that were on the ground, one of them had a camera and the other one didn't. Yet there was a picture of the astronaut with the camera, and then there was a picture of another astronaut on the moon without the camera. So how did he take a picture of, if he didn't have a camera, how did he take a picture of the other astronaut? And how did he get it so perfect? Because one picture, the flag is on the pole, the astronaut is standing in front of the flag, and above him was the Earth, right above the flag. Now, that picture would be hard to take on Earth. You would have to study years of planetary rotations and positions you would have to be a really great photographer to be in the right time at the right place to take a picture of the moon above your head standing in front of a flag and a pole. So imagine on the moon trying to pull that off. This is what I'm saying. They were better photographers, and you cannot adjust the aperture. The apertures were set. The Hasselblad camera is an excellent camera. I think they shoot 70 millimeter films with it today, which are very expensive. But they had to press these buttons with pressurized suits, pressurized gloves with thimbles, sewing thimbles for fingertips. It says they had 3 buttons on the suit, one for the radio switch, one for oxygen in and oxygen out. For some reason, there's a pocket for sunglasses. Okay, I heard that. Yeah, so this is, people, I don't think people have looked closely into this today. It's something that that's just in our past. But it says underwear special design for continuous wear. It says 3 insulated inner layers and 9 protective outer layers. And then it says tubing carrying water around the cooling garment. Also, the antenna on the backpack. Sometimes you would see that on the astronaut, and sometimes you didn't. Sometimes it was there, sometimes it wasn't. Depends on the mission. Um, Now, earlier I talked about the Van Allen belt, but first I want to look at the flight path. All right, I want to look at the flight path first. As you can see, hold on, let me move the moon out the way. All right, you see the Earth right there, right? So it looks like the rocket took off towards the middle part of the Earth, because the rocket takes off either at Cape Canaveral or Houston. It doesn't take off from Alaska. It doesn't take off from the North Pole. It doesn't take off from the South Pole. It takes off on a lateral plane that's near the equator, not close to the equator, not on the equator, but near the equator. And then it's supposed to land. It's supposed to separate. Part of it lands on the moon while the other part circles the moon, and then it's supposed to rendezvous. And then the astronaut is going to go through a small tunnel that brings it back into the ship. That's going to, the ships connect in space. It takes back off from the moon, and the astronaut has to climb through a small tunnel to get back into the main ship. But the lunar lander has the space of 2 phone booths. Like if you was in a phone booth to make a call, or if you was in London, you was in one of those red phone booths. The amount of space for those astronauts is only 2 phone booths that's probably laying on this side or so. And if they turn the wrong way or misjudge a step or turn their bodies and their oxygen system hits a button or something like that, it could kill them. It's too delicate. It's too small of a space for things to go wrong. Also, the amount of oxygen, the 50-50 oxygen mixture that they use make their situation too dangerous and too volatile. Now, if you want to say this was the biggest commercial campaign to make money, yeah, I will agree with that. Like, there was a guy who went up in a blimp for what you call it, Red Bull, and he jumped out the blimp once it reached lower space or orbit, and he was so high up that he actually passed out and woke back up, and he was able to pull the ripcord for his parachute. But that was a great advertising for Red Bull. Now imagine the Apollo space program. This is showing that, hey, we can make a rocket powerful enough to go to the moon. So that means we can make a rocket powerful enough to reach another country. So holler at me if you need a missile against your enemy. It was advertising for America to show people, hey, we could touch everybody. If we can get to the moon, we can get to your continent easily and quickly. So you might want to respect our power. It was a symbol of power because, first of all, takeoff would have been much faster. They took off slow just for the display of power. We didn't need a countdown. All that's Hollywood. They use a special formula for the fuel that makes the flare bright underneath the ship, just like a flare gun when you shoot a flare gun in the air. All of that was unnecessary. They even have super subwoofers around the launch pad for test launches that gives the illusion of takeoff when they don't use the rockets. Let me see. There was an old silent film with a soundtrack that showed man going to the moon for the first time. And that was the first time that America and human beings saw uh, a space launch, even though it was kind of comical and it was, primitive film. But they had the countdown, and then NASA followed suit with that same style and had a countdown. So it's easy to fake a launch because all those people that's using the technology at NASA to control the launch, we don't know what their jobs are. If you see the original footage of the first launch to the moon, you would see guys with nothing to do. People are twiddling their thumbs. They're eating sandwiches. They're laughing. They're talking. They're trying to look important, but they would not know if it was real or a simulation. Only a handful of people got to know that it's fake. There's not going to be all those people that's working at NASA. They're not going to be all in on the hoax. You only need a few key people to know. The rest, they're running a simulation, and trust me, there's a thin line between a real launch and a simulated launch. It still looks the same. That's why it's called a simulation. You see what I'm saying? Buzz couldn't land the module on Earth. He had to do an emergency parachute out the module when he tried to land it on Earth. He's never landed it successfully on Earth. How would he land it successfully on the moon? You see what I'm saying? So we have the flight pattern or a demonstration of the flight pattern of the rocket and the capsule on the screen. So what I want to show you now is the radiation belt. Now, this is the radiation belt. Now, we already saw the flight path of the rocket. So the only way the rocket could avoid the Van Allen belt if it took off from the North or the South Pole, and then it would have to go straight up and around to get to the moon. And we know that our rockets don't travel like that. It circles around the Earth, and then it broadens its angle to get further away from the Earth to get until it catches up to the space station or the moon. Now the Van Allen belt has a inner belt that's I guess you could say is 1,000 to 8,000 miles apart, and then you have the second belt, which is probably 21. Yeah, I'm not sure. The larger belt could be between 14 and 24,000 miles, but there is a gap between the two belts. But there's still radiation in between the belts, and you have to travel through those belts. If you ever got, an X-ray, which is very quick, it's like a quick photo, and they have to put a lid over your shoulder and stuff like that. And then there's a brick wall, and then the radiologist is far away, and he's hitting a button. Well, just imagine traveling through both these belts to get to the moon. All right, it's going to ruin your day. You're gonna cook, you're gonna fry, you're gonna become bacon. There's nothing on the ship. The metal for the ship is thin. There's nothing in the spacesuit that's gonna protect you. Even though, if you ask one of the astronauts, they would tell you, well, but we don't remember a belt, and our suits must have kept us safe. Well, even if you got past the Van Allen belt, there's another radiation belt that protects us. And like I said, I am not a scientist. I'm an amateur space enthusiast. I love science fiction. I love technology. But let's see if I can make this bigger. So see, we have the plasma sheet, which is in blue. we have the radiation belt, which is in red. So so you see the Van Allen radiation belt, but there's the red line that's near a yellow line, and that's the what they call the magneto sheath, and that protects us from solar winds. So I'm not saying that the radiation belt is a bad thing, or the Van Allen belt is a bad thing. Van Allen is a person who did an experiment to find out that the belt was there, because nobody even knew until he did the experiment and sent a rocket up to test the amount of radiation. All right, but solar winds could actually destroy our planet, but we have the magneto sheath that protects us from the solar winds. But once you outside the Van Allen belt and outside the magneto sheath, now you at risk of being, of having radiation from the solar winds from the sun. You see what I'm saying? This is more reasons to say, hey, we did not go to the moon. Now, there's a little pink area in this picture. There's a little pink area around the Earth. That area is lower space orbit. One time, the Space Shuttle tried to go, a little higher than normal, which like I said, it's under 300 miles. They tried to go a little bit higher, and they started to feel the effects of the inner. You have the inner Van Allen belt and the outer Van Allen belt. And so like I said, we can go back to the flight path, and I can make it bigger for you. I'm going to make it bigger for you. See what I'm saying? You see how it traveled is, damn well it went through that radiation belt, if it did successfully, which I doubt. Because like I said, imagine how much time they spent in space, and how they wasn't traveling at the speed that they're traveling. They would have been subjected to that a heavy dose of radiation. Matter of fact, the space shuttle tried to go a couple of 100 miles higher than usual, and they were still several miles, like at least a few thousand miles from the inner Van Allen belt, and they still felt the effects. They still saw traces of lights with their eyes closed and stuff like that. And when the spaceship landed on the moon, there was no blast from the rockets. There was no blast hole on the surface of the moon from the rockets. There were no debris around the landing poles of the ship. There was no dust covering the landing poles. And like I said, based on this picture, you can see the path of the rocket, and that guaranteed you to go through to deal with solar winds, to deal with the Van Allen radiation. Plus, all you got to do is do a search to see how heavy was the solar winds during that time, on that day, at that time period, and that'll tell you right there. If we had heavy solar winds during that mission would have been canceled. Or that guaranteed that we wasn't going to go. Or that guaranteed that they wasn't going to have a long, healthy life, which all the astronauts lived a long, healthy, rightful age before they died. That's further proof that we did not go, because like I said, a international commercial airplane pilot has the highest risk for brain cancer, because our ozone layer has a hole. Our ozone has a hole in it. But this is just something I was thinking about. I wanted to bring to you. I didn't want to get all techie on you, but sometimes we got to take a break from the trolling and stuff like that, and just ponder on other subjects and see if people buy into that. If you like this kind of subjects, this kind of subject matter, I can do more of this. The people will decide with the views. If people come for the drama, then we got more drama. People come for stuff like interesting topics like this, then we'll mix it up. Let me see. What else do I have here? Well, I just want to say that everything in this space program was ran on battery. All right. Let me look here. What if they didn't live? What if they see, that's what I'm saying, that they had 3 groups of astronauts. One was the ones that you saw in public. This is my theory. You had the ones that wore the suits for the film production. Then you had the ones who actually went, that probably only lived 5 years or less after completing the mission. And those people are considered heroes. They probably have a ceremony every year, and those people are practically worshipped for their mission, because we know that astronauts are Masons, and they did bring their Mason stuff to the moon, supposedly. There was a picture and everything like that. So, let's see here. Oh, right on. Shistification. Welcome to the show. I'm trying to wrap it up now, because like I said, in the morning I was supposed to talk to Diva. If I wake up, talk to Diva Tomboyish, and that should be fun. But to wrap everything up, I'm gonna have to rush the end part, and I am speaking on the fly. I don't have a written statement. I don't have Google open, but check it out. NASA only allowed the media to put a camera up to the screen. The media could not have a direct feed to the mission. That's why all the footage that the media had was fuzzy and stuff like that. But NASA was using 70mm film. They had beautiful full color footage of the mission. All right. But NASA conveniently destroyed the equipment that can play that film. All right. And then they conveniently lost the film. And when they did do a movie about the Apollo 16 mission, the filmmaker had to go to a video rental store and rent a VHS film about the mission, and use that VHS footage to put in the movie to recreate the Apollo 16 mission, which is messed up. Well, the next time I talk on this subject, because like I said, I'm a big fan of science fiction, and I actually wanted to be in NASA. I used to have a NASA jacket when I was little. But yeah, we could talk about the space station and the Challenger. I got theories on that also, but we can't do it all in one morning. But I agree with you, Key. That could be for future discussions. We can stay on this subject for a minute. After all, it is 2020, and I think this is going to be the year of revealing. Things that were in the dark is going to come to light this year. You see what I'm saying? Oh, okay. Ariel. Hey, they might be right. Your grandparents might be right. I said we didn't go because of the Van Allen belt, and because of the solar winds and because of the magnetosphere. And also everything was ran on battery. Things wasn't digital like it is now. Everything ran on battery, and I don't even think it was nickel ion. I mean, right now we use lithium ion, which is very great. If they would have had lithium ion back then, oh my God. But we didn't go because Stanley Kubrick helped them fake the mission. Point blank, period. There were three groups. Hollywood was not making films. They must have hired about 700 people from Hollywood. The last time they had that many people from Hollywood working on one project, that it was the Nebuchadnezzar silent film in the early days that Black talked about earlier. But just imagine every single thing is running on battery, and then the broadcast and communication is running on analog also. And we have a huge TV tower here that we don't use for analog TV anymore. We use digital TV. But even when it was broadcasting, once you got past 50 miles, you cannot receive a signal from that antenna. So imagine trying to send a signal from here to the moon. All right. It's just no way. You know, by the time it got to the moon, it would be deeply disturbed. What's happening? Anja Rael. Oh, cool. Yeah, I love the space program, and it gave us hope and stuff like that. But we also got to understand that it is a government-ran facility. A matter of fact, let me, because it's getting late. Oh, it is late. Yeah, I got to go. But let me run a couple of interesting things that I learned about today's space program. Well, NASA's portion of the federal budget peaked at 4% in 1965. Apollo 7 astronaut Walter Cunningham said during congressional testimony in 2015, for the past 40 years, it has remained below 1%. And for the last 15 years, it has driven towards 0.4% of the federal budget. Now, Trump's budget called for a return to the moon and later an orbital visit to Mars, but given the ballooning costs and the snowballing delays related to NASA rocket program, they may not be enough funding to make it either a destination, even if the International Space Station gets defunded early. And a 2005 report by NASA estimated that returning to the moon would cost about $104 billion, and that's $133 billion today with inflation. Now, NASA budget is $21.5 billion, and the Trump administration is asking Congress to boost that to $22 billion in the 2020 budget. Those amounts may sound like a windfall until you consider the total gets split amongst the agency's divisions and ambitious projects. The James Webb Space Telescope, the giant rocket project called Space Launch System, SLS, and far-flung mission to the Sun, Jupiter, and Mars, the asteroid belt, the Kepler belt, and the edge of the solar system. By contract, the U.S. military gets a budget of about $680 billion a year. So that's just food for thought. I can't get more deep and more in depth about this because of the time constraints. But please catch the replay, Anja Rael. I did talk about the Van Allen belt. I even showed the diagram, but what I did first was show the flight path of the capsule from Earth to the moon. Then I showed the inner and outer Van Allen belt, as well as the the magnetosphere sheath. Because once you get past the sheath, then you have to deal with the radiation from solar winds. And that sheath actually protects the Earth. And of course, the inner and outer Van Allen belt protects the Earth too. So it's not a bad thing. But I do have pictures and stuff like that. If you rewind the show. And the only reason I did the show today because I was inspired by the full moon. And Key says, well, you know, Star Trek Generation had an episode where they covered time distortion. Wow. Well, I like the holodeck on the old Star Trek show, but I got to go get some rest, and hopefully I'll be awake when Diva tried to contact me. But I just wanted to give this as food for thought. Thank you for tuning in, and hopefully everybody catch the playback. And I just want to say peace and hair grease. I'm out.
I'm the magnificent.
Tell them what your name is. Yo, man, I don't think they heard you. Why don't you tell them what your name is?